we're seeing now, you might ask, right? This is all great. Thanks so much for telling me what you've done historically, but what's the now? And that comes to the urgency of us having this presentation right now, right after basically, a day or two after the Fed raised rates 50 basis points, and everybody is concerned about what it means for the economy, and saying, if you're worried about that, you're missing the big picture, which is why we need to have this urgency to talk to you right now. Because we're seeing a huge trend that's about to create a ton of wealth opportunities. And that trend specifically is around the mess we're in, right? Everywhere that you look, you can see stories about how supply chains are a mess right now, right? You see stories in Reuters just recently about how we have snarled ports that are basically causing supply chains to be inefficient, right? We've got trucks backed up in ports, truck backed up at border crossings. We've got multiple lines of ships out at Long Beach, et cetera. And the problem is, because of that, we can't get things where they're supposed to get, right? We've got companies asking questions about how they're going to solve their issues with their supply chains. In Forbes specifically highlighting how companies are rethinking their supply chains dramatically, right? We've got government officials highlighting specifically how we have serious issues that are going to need to be invested in and resolved to fix supply chains. Because if we don't, we're going to continue to have the issues that are creating these inflationary headwinds that we have right now. And we've also got economists saying, right, look, the issue with inflation and everything else is really on the supply side and fixing it, right? And even the economist, right, is highlighting how supply chains are in a complete mess and they need to be fixed. And so companies are trying to figure out a solution. And that solution, right, for many of them is thinking about things like, how do we bring the supply chain back, right? People are talking about nearshoring, right? In Forbes, in various newspapers, in The Economist, everyone's talking about, is the solution that we fix our supply chains by not doing the same thing, but adjusting it. And the biggest thing that we're going to need to do if companies are going to do this, are going to fix their supply chains, is we're going to see one big kind of trend be massive in a way that we haven't seen in 15 to 20 years. That's going to unlock tremendous wealth in a very specific niche of the market. And that's, we're going to have to see massive investment, and we're already starting to see it, right? Of course, everybody remembers when the Senate passed the $1 trillion infrastructure bill that basically said, hey, the US government is going to be investing in fixing some of the issues that we have with infrastructure that are holding up our supply chains. But it's not just the government investing, right? We've also got many companies talking about the fact that we need to invest more in manufacturing capacity. We have people who, thanks to the at-home revolution that we talked about earlier, want more things. We have issues with supply chains because we have underinvested in our manufacturing capacity and our supply chain capacity. We need to invest, and we're seeing companies around the US talk about it. Companies like Intel that has made a point to say, we're building more foundries so that we can actually supply more chips for the massive demand that we're seeing, investing $20 billion in Ohio. Generac, one of the big winners from the at-home revolution because of the demand for generators, saying we're going to ramp up production. We see such visibility in terms of demand for our generators. We're expanding and we're building new factories. People like Ford and GM specifically talking about how they're going to start getting into chip development so they can solve their issues with their supply chain, and how they're investing in things like EV and battery solutions, et cetera, because they understand the way that they're going to be able to supply what everybody wants is they're going to have to invest. They're finally going to invest in CapEx. And this industrial investment wave is exactly why the Fed is raising rates, because it understands that CapEx is surging. And because of that, it wants to make sure that the market has a healthy environment and we don't have just a blow off top. We actually manage how fast that investment is happening because it is coming, right? And this whole entire environment, this issue around investing, it is not just in a small pocket of the economy. You look at where the headlines are, you look at where the investment is. It's everywhere from, right, cars to generators to chips to investment in infrastructure everywhere. And so because of that, there is a massive tailwind here that we think is going to make, like I said, some specific niches of the market be far more profitable and create a tremendous amount of wealth for those who are in the right situation, the right positioning.